What if we told you that one of the smallest things about you is probably the most destructive and most powerful thing? We're going to talk about that today on the Midweek Move. Hello and welcome to the Midweek Move podcast, where we examine the scriptures line by line, verse by verse, and ask ourselves, what is happening here? I am here today with my good friend, fellow pastor, my brother in the Lord, Ben Schmaltz.
What's going on?
How you doing, man?
Doing great, man. Life is good.
I'm glad to have you back here with us. It's been a while. I think we were at Acts last time.
Acts 26, I think.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
And so if you guys want to check that out, there will be a link in the show notes below.
I remember that specifics, but I do.
So it was a great conversation.
Yeah, absolutely.
But today, Ben, you're going to be joining us because we're going to be continuing our conversation through the book of James.
James, love it.
Now, in the show prep, man, you said you love James.
It's one of my favorite books in the Bible.
Yeah?
I love how raw James is. It's like that throwing that salt in the open wound or ripping a Band-Aid off when you still got a lot of leg hair. You know what I mean? Like it's just so good and raw and should be an eye-opening experience for most Christians and people that are involved in church life.
Absolutely. We've talked about that several times over the last several weeks. Is like, we're like, all right, here's this, but wait, there's more.
Yeah, no doubt.
And so we're jumping in, guys. We're going to be in James chapter 3 today. Over the last several weeks, we've been talking about this book, and starting in James 3. What's interesting for me about this is it's kind of picking up the conversation from James chapter 1. Specifically, James 1:19 says, "Know this, my beloved brothers, let everyone be quick to hear and slow to speak and slow to anger." And then verse 26, "If anyone thinks he is religious and does not bridle his tongue, but deceives his heart, this person's religion is worthless." So it's just interesting that we're already in chapter 3. And again, we've talked about this several times over the years, over the last year, because we've been at this for over a year now.
Yeah.
Is this, we have this disconnect with chapters. You know, we go, oh, it's chapter 3, and we think it's self-contained.
Right.
This is still conversations going back to the first chapter. That's why we had to keep everything in context here.
Yeah, sure.
So we're going to pick up in verse 1. Ben, could you read verse 1
Yeah,
first?
absolutely. "Not many of you should become teachers, my brothers, for you know that we who teach will be judged with greater strictness."
All right. So we just lost all the pastors who were listening to the podcast.
That's right. See you later. All those that are praying about being in ministry.
Right? They're like, oh, I'm done.
I'm out. See ya.
So James is beginning his discussion here by warning the readers that they need to be aware of the burden of being a teacher. Like, this is not something that we do lightly.
Yeah.
Like, being it's an honor being a pastor.
Sure.
But it's not something we should take lightly. But he's not even talking about just pastors.
Yeah.
Like, if you look at the vocabulary, he says, for you know that we who teach.
We who teach.
So James is an apostle. Mm-hmm. He's an early church leader, but he's, by all senses, he's a pastor. And we've talked about this over. Just because you may have one title doesn't mean you operate in multiple gifts.
Right.
And teaching is one of the gifts given to the church. And so he's saying, you may be a pastor, you may be a prophet, whatever, but if you teach, that's one of the gifts that you can take place. But there is a burden on us. Yeah. How does that affect you in your day-to-day life?
Yeah, man, it makes me really excited and happy that I had leadership in my life that really spoke to me about this scripture before I started teaching my own self. And I'm not the best teacher. I walk in that gifting. But it's probably not my number one up there at the top. But would teach a lot and being in church leadership, and it just really made me slow down and think about what I'm saying, the weight of what you're saying. The words are so powerful, and I think obviously I always get ahead of myself when I'm in these talks. I said that the last time we were here, but I am so grateful that they had somebody that tried to talk me out of being in ministry, as opposed to just pushing you, because there's such a need, right? The workers are few, the harvest is plentiful. There's such a need for more of us to jump on the bandwagon of let's harvest souls, because there's such a need.
Right.
But I am grateful for James. I'm grateful for the leaders in my life that said, well, slow down.
Yeah.
Because this isn't for everybody.
Right.
Again, that's not to belittle your faith or to squander your faith, but it's to say, really think about Are you called of God? Is this burden that you have to teach, this burden, is it self-motivating? Is there any other motivation besides the fact that there's a message inside of you that was given to you by Jesus,
Right.
that you have this burden to give to others?
Right.
And I was just really appreciative because I sat back and I thought about that for a while, and it made me a little scared to teach. Obviously, I mean, it's a little hey, don't do James the apostle saying, hey, slow down. You shouldn't all be eager to jump into this.
Right. Now, this isn't to discourage people from sharing their faith. This is
right,
very
right.
different.
Teaching the Word of God. Right. Thank you for the correction. And not necessarily correction, but just thank you for guiding me in that lane, because this is, again, teaching the Word is so vital because the Word is God. So we're not just teaching a memorization class. When you're teaching the Word, you're teaching people who God is and the nature of God. And if you do that the wrong way, you very much can mislead people in their faith.
Exactly. And as leaders, we have, like it or not, influence in people's lives.
100%.
What we say, what we do. And I mean, I have known people who have based their lives off the teachings of specific leaders.
Yeah.
And not necessarily on Jesus, but on leaders. And when things have happened, their lives are destroyed.
I've been guilty of doing that myself, my own testimony. For sure.
It's natural, though.
Yeah.
It's natural for us to look at a man and go, all right, you're my person. You know, it's understandable.
Right.
But that's the burden. I feel like James is teaching the leaders. He's like, look, you need to be aware the burden you carry.
Yeah.
And the things that you are giving out. Now, the early church he's dealing with, he's talking to some leaders in these various churches that are dispersed, and they've done terrible things already. They've shown favoritism to rich individuals. They've done different things, and James has been bringing correction. Now we're down to the point. It's like, look, you guys want to be teachers. You need to be aware. This is not just for the faint of heart. You guys need to be understanding that what you say and what you do, it's going to change lives.
Yeah.
And like even go back to Jesus teaching in, I think it was Matthew, and talk about, suffer not the children who come unto me, and everything. But he's talking about, woe to you who causes one of these little ones to stumble. Mm-hmm. He goes, if you cause one of these people to walk away from the Lord, to put up a stumbling block so great that they go, I don't want this Jesus, there's judgment coming upon you. Mm-hmm. He says a millstone. And so this is a heavy burden for those who are in leadership that we need to keep in mind.
Yeah.
And so he continues this conversation on, though, with how we speak. James 2, for we all stumble in many ways, and if anyone does not stumble in what he says, he's a perfect man, able to bridle his whole body. Mm-hmm. And so he's saying, look, we all stumble.
Yeah.
We all do this type of thing.
Right.
But my brain stopped functioning for a second there. But, he's saying that everyone stumbles, but if you don't, then you're perfect.
Yeah.
And you're able to bridle his whole body. This is like, that means you're able to take constraint. You're able to put everything in control.
Right.
So what does this verse mean to you?
Yeah, obviously, I say cliche. It's not really cliche. It's the greatest truth in the world that there was one perfect man. And anybody else that wasn't named Jesus Christ of Nazareth, you have fallen short of that. In Romans 3:23, we've all fallen short of the glory of God. We all make these mistakes. So I think that it helps me understand that regardless, and we're talking about this in one of our services coming up, I'm working on a sermon about Zacchaeus, on how in one moment Jesus can transform your life regardless of your story. Mm-hmm. He was known as the notorious sinner, right? And in town, and in that moment, all the mistakes, all the mess ups, all the bad character in a moment because of Jesus can be transformed, but only because he was perfect,
right?
Because he was unlike all others. And so I love this because for we all stumble. It's almost like it's okay for us to have those moments of weakness. It's not okay for us to live in those moments of weakness, but it's okay to have them and to have that stumbling block because again, we have Jesus to fall back on. And so I'm really encouraged by that. And then it goes into, if you can do this, you can control your whole body.
Exactly. Now, specifically saying we stumble in what we say, the vocabulary, what we talk.
Yeah.
I know I myself, I have said the wrong thing.
Yeah, I'm extremely by nature without Jesus. Take Jesus out of the equation. And I'm very grateful for helpers and leaders in ministry alongside me. I'm very negative by nature. My mentality, whether that's how I grew up or whether that's just how I was, just my natural state of mindset is, I can be very negative. and not so much for other people. Like I can be an encourager, but for myself, like I can't do that, or I can't do this, or I'm not very good at that, or I'm not very good at this. And it's just kind of a negative thing. But I had some leaders a couple of years back that came alongside me as I was starting the pastor back then. I was lead pastor for about 5 years. And a year or two into that, I was feeling the pressure of this is not working. I'm not doing a very good job. And these leaders were able to come alongside me and say, hey, pastor, we've noticed in your sermons, you've mentioned this and this, and it's a little negative connotation, and we know that that's not who you are.
Right.
So I started thinking about the words, as you say, the words that I'm saying, and I realized that I was causing my own self not to stumble within sin in the context of sin, but to stumble in negativity. And I know that the words are powerful, and I was believing, although if you asked me, I would say, oh, I don't believe that. But I was really making myself believe these words, these negative things that like, hey, I'm just not good enough to be a pastor. I'm not the one that should be leading this group of people in this season. And really, I was really believing that subconsciously, but I was saying it. And it was because of the repetition of those words that I was starting to believe it.
Right.
And I noticed, here's the victory in it, as I changed my vocabulary in the next month and a half, that started changing in me. The confidence came back, and words. And this is just not even just scriptural. This is just, people use this in the business world all the time. Your words are so powerful.
Oh yeah.
There's businessmen that don't know about Jesus, but they look in the mirror and they say, "You're going to be successful today. You're going to have a great day. You're going to make that sale today." And then they go off and they do it. And so it's because the power of our words can control our outcome. And so it's very important. I'm not one of those guys that says, I'm going to have a Ferrari next week. I'm going to have a Ferrari next week. I'm not that guy.
Yeah.
But when it comes to joy in your life, you know, even if you're not feeling the joy right now, if you just begin to claim, Lord, I'm walking in your joy, I'm walking in your peace. You may not feel, even if you're in sickness right now and you're dealing with an illness, Lord, I'm walking in your health because by your stripes I'm healed. And you start declaring the word of God over your life, your outcome will often follow shortly after.
Exactly.
And so anyway, I think that's incredible that here's Jesus as the example, right? He's not mentioned him here, but we know that that's the perfect man.
You're right.
So Jesus, if James, who was a sinner at one point, could become a follower of Christ, become an apostle of Christ, can become a teacher, can get to this point, man, surely if he can control his tongue eventually, I can control the words, my tongue, the things that are coming out of me.
Exactly. And so we had this conversation about how, obviously, I mean, connotation of it is this thing is difficult to control.
100%.
And he says, if you're able to control it, you control your whole body. The things we speak, what we speak out, man, it shifts the nations. So he continues on verses 3 through 5. Can you read that for us?
Yeah. If we put bits into the mouths of horses so that they obey us, we guide their whole bodies as well. Look at the ships also. Though they are so large and are driven by strong winds, they are guided by a very small rudder, wherever the will of the pilot directs. So also the tongue is a small member, yet it boasts of great things. How great a forest is set ablaze by such a small fire.
All right. So James is giving some very relatable examples to the readers, right?
Yeah.
We to demonstrate the power of our tongue, the what we speak, the what we say. Again, it's not necessarily like this is a piece of flesh and a muscle in our mouths, but it's the words that we're talking about specifically. So a tiny bit controls a large animal with these. A rudder controls a huge boat. Both examples demonstrate how a small item like a tongue can direct people's lives. Your words can shape nations. They can, at the same time, however, he gives an example of how they can destroy a forest. They can bring life and they can bring death. So my question for you is, has there ever been a time when you've said the wrong thing and it's messed things up for you?
Oh, well, yeah, several probably.
And how did you handle the situation specifically?
Well, one specifically is I'll just talk about being a father. For me and my children, I have two kids, Joseph, who's about to be 7, and Eva, who is 3 years old, one girl and one boy. And so I recognized it was a while back, and my son, who's very sensitive, very loving, very caring, I realized how impactful my words are to him. And so he was standing on a pillow, and I was getting frustrated because he wasn't doing what I was saying. So as parents do, we get frustrated sometimes. And I was like, son, pick up a sofa cushion. Because it's for the sofa, it wasn't just a pillow. He's like 4 years old at the time, mind you. So like he's still learning. Like so, I said sofa cushion. I didn't say the word pillow. I said, son, pick it up. He's like, I don't see a sofa cushion. You know, he doesn't even know what a sofa cushion is. But I'm not recognizing that in my 30 whatever year old brain at the time. And so I'm getting frustrated. I'm like, son, it's right there. And I'm pointing at it. And he's like, where? And so I grabbed it. Again, it's a pillow. I grabbed it and I pulled it from under his feet so he kind of stumbles. And I fuss at him and I didn't say anything that was, I was yelling. And I smacked him with it like I was playing with him. Like not playing with him. I was angry.
We're not advocating child abuse.
Right. But I was just like, it's right here, you knucklehead, kind of a thing.
Right.
And just smacked him. I didn't hit him hard. I promise I didn't hit him hard.
Right.
I don't even really spank. We're not that kind of parents. We don't parent that way. But I just kind of hit him with this right here, you goofball, kind of a thing. He emotionally just lost it, just broke down and cried. Now, yes, it was part of my vocabulary, but it was also my actions in that moment too that I learned. Hey, these little things just mean so much. I remember just teaching them, and just like if you say one thing, he would break down, he would lose it. One negative thought. And my wife pulled me aside. She's like, really, you can't do that. And I immediately, I hit him. I see he's broken down. She's like, really? She looked at me from across the room. Really?
Right.
Like, what are you doing? So I grabbed him, held him in my arms, loved on him. And I wish I could say it's the last time that something like that has ever happened.
Right.
It's not, because again, I'm not perfect.
Right.
There's been other moments.
Right.
But here's where I, again, a victory story, not so much focus on the negative, but the win is, again, although it can bring a forest fire, it can bring such great life.
Right.
The power of your words. And so I am quick now in my life. I made the adjustment from that moment a couple of years ago on, that if I do make a mistake or I do lash out in anger or I do something crazy as a parent or father that I just don't like, that wouldn't sit well with me, I'm quick to go to them and admit that mistake.
That's so good.
And I've noticed the change in the shift. Another situation I won't go into it for time.
Yeah.
Yelling at Eva for something that she did. And I go into the living room, Joseph's on his switch, and his eyes are as big as saucers. And he's just like looking. And I was like, I looked at him, he looked at me, and his eyes are real big. And I said, you want some too? Just being silly.
Right.
And he's like, Dad, I've never heard you scream like that.
Wow.
And it just killed me. As a father, like, maybe I mishandled that. So I immediately apologized to him. Like, I would get down and hold him and say, Dad shouldn't have talked to your sister that way.
Right.
And I'm sorry. And so then I went and talked to Evangeline, who's two and a half at this time. And I'm like, man, I lost it to a 2-year-old. There's something in me that still needs work. And I'm grateful for, again, that there's a perfect father, that when I do say these words so again, you're asking me the question about how, has there been a situation, how'd you handle it? I think what I learned from David in the Bible, King David, be quick of repentance.
Right.
Understand, own your mistakes. Take them, the consequences of your mistakes, own them, live through them,
right.
But run to the Father.
Exactly.
Run to the Father, forgive, ask forgiveness for those that you've wronged, ask for forgiveness from the Father, make right your wrongs. And,
right.
I think that's how you handle those mistakes, especially when we recognize them. So
yeah, absolutely. And again, I love the fact that those are just so very, very normal everyday examples. Sure. Because that's the thing is, sometimes people come to us and they're thinking about, because we're in the context of leadership, but you're talking about how you're dealing with your kids, how you deal with your wife.
Yeah, there's nobody I would rather lead, that I'm more concerned about how I lead than my kids and my wife.
Absolutely. And that's the thing is, we need to have the context of what we're saying, not just to leaders and people we lead, but our families. Yeah. We so often get so comfortable with the people in our day-to-day life that we can lose track of, well, I've done the same thing with Celeste. We were doing some stuff and I got frustrated. And Celeste and I, we don't argue.
Right.
We just don't. I think we've been together for 12 years, and I don't think we've ever had a major argument ever.
Right.
Because we're both very sensitive to that kind of thing. But I have been I've been frustrated. I'm sorry for being a jerk.
Right.
And that's the whole thing about our tongues. They can direct lives, but they can burn things down. And just as easy as I can, cause damage to a person, I can also bring life to them. I can, like that small rudder, redirecting a ship going the wrong direction, bringing hope.
Yeah.
So he's bringing this whole thing out here. Now, interesting, this verse highlights the deadliness of speech. Also, I'm sorry, the next verse is like that. Verse 6 through 7.
Yeah.
Let me read that for us. The tongue is a fire and a world of unrighteousness. The tongue is set among our members, staining the whole body, setting on fire the entire course of his life. So here we have James, and he's expounding on this whole fire illustration of the tongue. Not tongues of fire. This is not a holy fire. Right. But he's talking about how
Acts 2, huh?
Right. It's a world of unrighteousness.
100%.
And it can corrupt us, but also corrupt everything else in front of us. It can bring destruction.
Oh, yeah.
And he makes it very clear. It is set by hell.
Yeah.
This is a demonic thing that can take place out of us.
Yeah.
And then verse 7 and 8, for every kind of beast and bird and of reptile and sea creature can be tamed and has been tamed by mankind, but a human being can tame, but no human being can tame the tongue. It is relentless, or restless, evil, full of deadly poison. So he's talking about how, we've been given dominion. We know this from Genesis. We've been given dominion over all the earth, and we can tame about anything. We shouldn't tame everything, but we can. Unfortunately, I cannot have a pet wolf as much as I would love to. Can't tame that thing.
Yeah.
I can get a Malamute, and that's about as close as to it.
There you go.
But what he's saying here is you can tame all these things, but the tongue, man, there is a huge thing to it.
Yeah.
A restless evil. And what's interesting, this relationship of a poison. Poison comes in various strengths of deadliness. And it could sting for a while and just, make you uneasy.
Yeah.
It can kill you quickly, or it just slowly kills you. And that's the thing that's challenged me in my mindset of the words I speak. They can bring life just easily, but also if I just casual, small things of saying negative things, can slowly kill a person,
100%.
including ourselves. You mentioned this earlier about how when you were the lead pastor of another church and how you were speaking negative things.
Yeah, without even doing it on purpose.
Right.
Yeah, right.
And it was slowly.
Yeah, well, and the power of, and to show how strongly more negative words are than they are positive, let me I'll try to make it quick. It's a real good example. And I've talked to my mom about this, so if I share this testimony and mom's listening to this and she sees it tagged, because she probably will, know that I love you, Mom. And we've talked about this, and I have gotten to a place where I made my mom feel really guilty about this story. So when we were kids, we were singers. I'm a musician. We worship at the church. I have a God gifting calling to be a worship leader, to be a singer, to be that thing. My brother as well. He's on staff at a church. Incredible musician. We're family musicians. My little brother's the only one that doesn't sing. Everybody else in our family sings. And when we were young, we would go on road trips, and on our road trips, it was always opportunity because we had nothing else to do. There was no Game Boy. I mean, we didn't have Game Boys. They were there, but we didn't have one. There were no iPhones. There was nothing like that. And our car was just a car, and we would get super bored. So if we weren't coloring, Mom would always start singing, and she was teaching us how to sing harmonies.
Oh.
And I was younger, about 3 years younger than my older brother. My older brother has a near perfect pitch.
Wow.
He would probably say it's perfect pitch, but he's arrogant. I'm just kidding. Good brotherly love there.
Talking about pride.
And so
next
he
week.
would catch. He was easy. I'm 3 years younger than him. He would catch on to the harmony lines better.
Right.
I could sing the melody line just perfectly fine, but to sing that second part that isn't the main part without hearing somebody else, I struggled. And I remember one conversation that my mom said, Ben, just sing the melody line. You're having a hard time. You're just not doing good enough to sing the harmony. And my mom didn't mean anything ill other than, hey, you're just struggling today, literally, with this harmony line. So just sing the melody for now, and we'll figure it out later. She didn't mean it as a negative thing, but that stuck with me. And the reason why the enemy just fed that over the years. That word stuck with me so strong. I'm 36. I'm going on 37 here in a couple of months. That word still haunts me to this day. And my mom didn't mean anything of it. It was just a word. It was just her talking, and it was just maybe directed in a little negative connotation, but nothing more than that.
Right.
It was a distraction for the destiny that God had placed in my life, the calling that God had placed in my life to keep me from walking in that. And you're talking about, I began to sing in productions for the church and begin to sing. We would do plays for some River Parish drama group that we were, guild thing that we were in. And I never had the confidence to ever step into the gifting that God had given me to be a musician and a singer. And I remember all the way, I was probably 5, 6, 7 years old, going to my 9th grade, 10th grade year. My choir director comes up to me. My brother had been in choir. He had won all the awards. He was the greatest person. I said I was going to make this short, and I didn't. And she comes up to me. She says, hey, I know Eric gets all the attention. That's my brother. Eric gets all the attention, and he's such good, and he is. He's a great talent. But I just want to let you know that I really think your voice, not that it's better than his, but I really feel like it can potentially be far greater than where your brother is. And those words, as equally and destructive as the phrase that my mom said, hey, let's just work on this one part because you're not getting that yet. Right. You're not there yet. You're not at that level yet.
Totally.
And again, that just seemed like a crush because everything I tried to do as a younger brother was live up to the older brother's hype, trying to be 3 years older than what I actually am. And this one phrase just really the confidence didn't come in me automatically, but it opened my eyes to say, there's something there.
Mm-hmm.
Fast forward 20 years out of high school, almost. God, wow, I'm old. I lead worship every Sunday, sing every Sunday, lead people into God's presence with my voice every Sunday.
Right.
All because of the powers of an encouragement. I would have probably given up or never really went to amount to anything as far as music's concerned.
Right.
Because the power of words.
Right.
And again, those people were not even real spirit. I mean, my mom is, but this choir director was not a spiritual leader. We're at a public high school, and I don't even know if she went to church. I have no clue. Mm-hmm. But her words of encouragement got me back on track, what God is calling and putting in me to do for several years.
Yeah.
And so, yes, James is hitting it. They can destroy your life and derail you from doing. And there are people that right now that may be listening, that there is something inside of you that you're allowing other people's opinions or other people's words or even your own words to derail the calling of God in your life to do what God's called you to do because you don't believe in yourself or you have this low self-esteem. I can never become that missionary, or I can never be that preacher, or I can never fill in the blank, teach that Sunday school in my church, or whatever the case may be, whatever class or whatever the thing is that God has ordained you, called you, placed you, put a mantle over you, and you just strip that off because of the words of a few. Again, my mom's intention was not to derail me, but that statement in that moment, for some reason, as a 7-8-year-old, whatever it was that I was spoken, derailed me for years, and I dealt with an unconfidence in music because of it. Until years later, one phrase got me back on track, and then it took a long time to get that confidence. But man, now I do it basically for a living. I mean, I know I'm a pastor and I do other things, but that's what opens the door was my gifting in music. You know, the need to lead people in worship. So
word, and I love the fact that you bring up the fact that it again, there was a word that came that brought life. This is why it's so important for us as believers to recognize things in each other. There are some people. We used to have a guy in our community here. You remember Mike Back, and dude was. He was one of those people you came off as you weren't sure if he was real or not. He was genuine. He's like, you're a champion. You're great. Always speaking life to people. And and I kind of like you. I'm a bit cynical, a bit skeptical of people. And so I'm just like, are you a real person? like, come on, man. Like, okay. But I realize he's genuinely drawing stuff out of people, especially knowing the community he comes from. And that is so important because there are so many people in life today that they have been told that they're worthless, that they have no worth in any aspect, or there's talents that were just budding, but because they were only budding, they weren't truly fulfilled. People dogged it, and so that just fell apart. We need to be like, we need to have the spirit of Mike Back.
That encourager,
and be
champion.
Like, and not that, don't be fake about it. Don't, be you. But when you see something in people, we have got to be intentional by going, hey, this is great. You have a talent in this. And, not necessarily directing people straight to, hey, we need you to sing for the church choir. But man, hey, you have a great voice. You have an eye for art. You have a great business mind. We have a young man in our lives here that dude is smart. He's got this great an eye for numbers. He sees things. Dude is going to be a businessman one day. I mean, he's going to be a Fortune 500 one day. And we just speak to you are so great at this, and we encourage that
for sure.
across the board. But we have to be intentional about that because, and like James said earlier, it's hard to control the tongue. It's so easy for us to go, okay, you're dumb. It's so easy for us.
I love that. I love that. I went to a conference just a week or so ago, and then one of the guys that was speaking, one of the guest speakers, he said this phrase that you can't just celebrate wins, you have to create wins in people. So you have to look for ways to celebrate people because people need to be celebrated. I mean, you think about all the negativity all around the world. The world's burning. America's terrible, inflation, gas prices, Democratic, Republican, whatever. It's always this negative news coming out. And that's just on the national level. I mean, think about in the homes where you may have grown up with a drunk father, or you may have grown up in an abusive situation, whatever the case may be, the negativity in life is so large. So he was saying, like, we got to celebrate people. But you can't just celebrate people when something happens. Like, create a way in somebody, recognize the gold in somebody. It's how my youth pastor used to teach us in leadership and student leadership. Look for somebody, find the gold, and just pour into that. And this is exactly what you're saying with this young man. You find that thing and you create a win in their life to say, hey, you're worth celebrating. And I think that's just so powerful because I know, again, for me, having people come alongside me and saying, man, you can do this, you can do this, is why I am where I am today.
Exactly.
And recently I've stepped back into youth ministry a little bit and helping with students. And it's just, you're at that age where you see there are 14 years old coming in, 13 years old coming into youth ministry, already defeated by life.
Yeah.
And if we don't flip that around and turn that around for our handful of students, 50 or so students, you got 50 kids that you could transform the whole city if all 50 of those kids really believe in what Jesus has called them to do and is doing for them, or has done for them.
Yeah. And this is across the board. It's not just teenagers, but adults also. Adults need that encouragement. I know for me, there have been times where I had a season where I was really in a low point. I do art on the side. I do some social media stuff for people. And I was having like loss after loss after loss, and there were certain people that they weren't not doing it on purpose, but I was just no, and it was really affecting me. Like I'm sitting going, dude, I just need to give up on something I enjoy doing. And it took a couple people to encourage me and to go, no, hey, this is stuff. Sure. So this is across the board. For whoever's listening, what's going on in your life right now, and is it because people have spoken some negative stuff in it? Yeah. And recognize it, rebuke some of the stuff maybe, because some stuff is just lies. Now critiques are critiques,
right?
But there's a spirit behind some stuff. But find people in your life to speak life
into. Yeah. And I would say, pause for a minute, 'cause I feel like the Lord wanted me to say this when you said something that's not just for youth. There's a thought in my mind is that there's an elder couple, elder single, maybe you're just in your older senior years, whatever age you feel like that is, where you feel like maybe life is over. You feel like life is coming to an end. And so I feel like the Lord's saying, hey, you've been pretty negative with saying that my time is over, my joy is over, I've done all that I'm going to do. And Jesus wants to remind you today that as long as there's breath in those lungs, there's purpose. That your journey is not over. If your journey was over, you wouldn't be here. And so I just really feel like I know I'm a youth pastor. I think about that way now. It's crazy that I'm back into that in the last month or so. I would have not thought, but here I am. And I'm thinking, hey, the next generation. But don't forget that you're still a part of that generation,
right?
Because we're right now. You're this generation. It starts from babies to old people. Like we're in this generation all together. Your life's not over, and Jesus wants you to know that, hey, don't give up, that he wants to encourage you. You have skills, you have wisdom, you have experience, you have a story that will transform people's lives. Don't give up yet. Don't just stay at home and say, oh, nobody cares about me. I'm at this whatever season of life. It's over. It's not over.
Yeah.
It's not over. You have breath in your lungs. It's worth praising. So I just wanted to pause. I just felt like the Lord wanted me to share that.
So good.
Hopefully you're listening and you hear that and you take it and you run with it.
I love it. Let's wrap this up with the last few verses, because it kind of ties in a little bit into that. From the same mouth come blessings and cursing. Yeah. My brothers. Again, he's speaking to Christians. These things ought not to be.
Right.
Does a spring pour forth the same opening, both fresh and salt water? Can a fig tree, my brothers, bear olives, or a grapevine produce figs? Neither can a salt pond yield fresh water. James is encouraging people here that we need to be aware of what we're saying. Back up in verse 9. With it, talking about tongue, we bless the Lord our Father, and with it we curse people who are the made like us. The way we speak to people, we're all about praising the Lord. In this early church, we're blessing the Lord, but they're cursing each other. With the words, and by proxy, we're cursing the Lord.
I mean, how can you serve and bless a God of love and sing about a God of love on a Sunday when you are talking negatively about the church across the street that may be doing things a little bit different than you?
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, they're not doing it right, so we're doing it right. And how many of us have gone to church on a Sunday fussing with our family right before church, even arguing with your spouse, saying negative things that you shouldn't say,
right?
And then you walk in and you're worshiping Jesus. I've had to make it to where I noticed that when I was leading for a while. I guess for some reason on Sunday mornings, my wife and I started getting into it. Every Sunday morning, something would come up, and we'd start getting at each other. And I had to recognize, me and her stepped aside and we're like, hey, we got to change this. Let's just wake up intentionally on a Sunday and encourage us, encourage one another, because again, the same scripture is you're going into a worship service and saying, God, you're a God of love, and God, we're going to serve you forever. And then you leave out of there and you're slandering people and you're talking bad about people and you're doing this. Man, I love the blessings and curses. That transformed my whole attitude as far as when I was a young 20-year-old believer, minister, whatever, was praying and saying, God, I don't want to just praise your when I'm in front of people praising you and in my closet praising you. I want to praise you in every conversation, in every situation. And do I do that? No, I'm not there yet. I'm not arrived. I'm still going. My pastor, Pastor Scott, always said, my pastor Scott, not your guys, Pastor Scott, Scott Holmes, he always says, leaders are learners. He used to say leaders are readers, but he learned, hey, you don't have to read to learn. Like if you're reading, you're great, but it doesn't mean you're learning anything. Leaders are learners. And so for me to be a leader that God has called me to be, I have to continually learn. I recognize that I'm not where I want to be, but I am thanking God today because I'm not where I used to be. So in this whole conversation of the tongue control and everything, I know you said, let's be short and wrap it up. And I'm done after this, is to say, I'm not there yet with my tongue control, but how can I be 1% better today? How can I be better today than I was yesterday?
That's good.
I won't be as good as I will tomorrow, but how can I better myself today?
And that's the thing, is it's a continual growth process. We're always growing, but at the same time, there is an aspect of who we are is what comes out. And this whole aspect of the end where he talks about water coming out of springs and figs producing olives. It doesn't make sense. James's brother, said it this way in Luke chapter 6, verse 45. The good person out of the good treasures of his heart produces good. The evil person out of the evil treasures produces evil. For out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. So if we're not putting into our heart, we're not taking into focus what we have in here, what comes out is going to be negative. And so it's important for you on a daily basis to go, okay, I need to encourage myself. I need to encourage my wife because that's what's going to come out is if we're being this stuff. And for those of you, the word that you had for the people who are that, man, they're at the end of their age, they're continuing speaking to themselves. I'm worthless. I'm old. I don't have anything else. That's
flip that around.
Coming out.
Come on.
Speak life into yourself.
100%.
Speak. It's somewhat of a defense mechanism. I have a tendency to make fun of myself. It's just a thing that takes place. But at the same time, it's similar to the praising God, but I'm cursing God's creation.
Oh man, that's so good.
So we have to maintain that.
That's so good. We teach our kids all the time. Even Joseph, I mentioned earlier, we teach them all the time. You were made wonderfully. God doesn't make mistakes. God doesn't create mess ups. God doesn't create things that are broken. God creates perfection. And the world was perfect before we messed it up with our sin. The world was perfect. And I have to just remind myself, even when I don't feel like I'm adequate, God created me. He put me in this situation. I've been praying since day one, and I have it tattooed on my left wrist. Lord, not my will, but thy will be done. Tattoo's another conversation for another day. Thy will be done. That's my life prayer. That's why I tattooed it on my wrist. I never want to forget that my journey. And if I am genuinely praying that, genuinely working towards that, I have to believe that the Lord is going to help me achieve that. If I'm really sincere and I'm really going after that. And so, man, be encouraged that you're wonderfully made. You're wonderfully made.
And then speak that.
Yes, speak it over yourself.
Speak over yourself.
Yes, look at yourself in the mirror and say, you know what? Some people may say I'm ugly as dirt, but the Lord says that I am wonderfully made.
That's one of those backhanded compliments.
I said it about myself. I wouldn't say it about you.
My goodness gracious. So, hey, here in a second, I'm going to ask Ben to give us his final big takeaway, the big walkaway for you. But I want to invite you guys, be part of us next week. Make sure you subscribe to this podcast and whatever podcast catch you're on, or if you're on YouTube. And because next week we're going to a conversation that continues here, talking about wisdom and where wisdom comes from and what kind of wisdom you may or may not be walking in. So, Ben, what is your big takeaway?
If I would say anything throughout this whole time, what this is teaches me when I've been studying, because we've talked about this for a week or so, 2 weeks now, that we're going to have this thing, is don't let the few words that were spoken to you in some season of your life defeat the calling of God in your life. There's probably negative things that have been said about you your entire. I mean, they called Mary the harlot. They called her the prostitute. Yet Jesus looked at her and called her daughter. And so remind yourselves that it doesn't matter what people are saying about me, what they have said. And maybe it's going back 20 years, 30 years. I'm 37 almost. That happened when I was 7. So 30 years ago, a word that my mom spoke, that's not true. And my mom said, we've talked about it. It's not. Believe what Scripture says, believe what God says about you, and don't believe in the power of words. And because of that, hold really a high responsibility for your own words. Because there are about probably 8 or 9 people right now in your life that are listening to you, that are looking at you, that are following you in some capacity, probably more than that, but that's just an average that I made up on the spot. So there's people that are looking at you and they're listening to the words that you speak. So be careful of the words you're saying, because you're either lifting somebody up or you're tearing somebody down.
So good. I know for me, it's similar mindset, but we need to be intentional.
Yeah, that's good.
About
love that. That's a good word.
Speaking into other people, but into ourselves.
Love that.
We need to be intentional. I want to encourage you guys who are listening, take stock of yourself. What are you saying to others and to yourself?
Yep.
And take Ben's advice. If you realize you slipped up and you said something really negative and you've caused damage, don't wait for them to come and rebuke you themselves. Go to them and go, hey, I need to apologize.
Yeah.
And then apologize to yourselves.
Sure.
If you've been negative, if you've been tearing yourself apart, you've been speaking down about who you are and what you have, apologize to yourself and move forward. Make steps to see yourself the way God sees you.
Yeah.
So good.
Love it.
All right, guys. Well, thank you for being part. Ben, how can people get a hold of you, and where are you at?
Yeah. I mean, you can email me at ben@gwshreve.com. That's my email address. I'm on staff at Gateway Church in Shreveport. You can find me on social media. I'll throw out my handles probably next time because I didn't write them down. I'm old, so I forget about those things. But yeah, you can email me. Love to email you back, talk with you, visit with you. If you have any questions, anything like that, and you can connect me there.
Awesome. Well, guys, thank you again for being part of the Midweek Move. Follow us on Facebook. Don't forget to subscribe to the YouTube channel for Midweek Move. And if this has encouraged you, if it's challenged you, hey, please share this out. Yep. Please put this out there and encourage other individuals also. And also want to invite you real quick, go to Apple iTunes and leave a review for us.
Yeah.
Because that helps the algorithm go, hey, this is something decent for you people to check out. So, hey, until next time, have a great week.